Hello folks, and welcome to another exciting episode of Special Effects for Television, brought to you by me, Tim. So this week, it's kind of a bigger project. You're going to basically use the techniques that I show you to create or recreate an exact replica of an intro to Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So let's get right into it. First off, I have some video files when you unzip the file I send you. And there are going to be, I believe, 9 different screens. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, all of the footage that you need is in this folder right here, with exception of one group shot at the end. And what I would ask you to do with that is you can just pull a group shot from some of the footage. So, for example, that would be fine. Let's see, there must be some other group shots. Right there would be good. Right there would be good. So there are quite a few different places where there are group shots. Here's some other ones. Let's see. Yeah, and there's a few in here too. So kind of anything. Dealer's choice, you can pick that. So you have kind of 9 different screens to deal with. You're going to be responsible for the graphics, so like those rectangles, and you're also going to be responsible for masking out the figure. And it also looks like there's a little bit of a gradient right there. You can kind of see what's happening. So in each one, they do the exact same thing, right? It does a freeze frame, and then it scales. But here's a pro tip. You're not going to need to scale it, because you can just do a freeze frame of that image. Now, after the freeze frame, you have text coming in. Notice there's a motion blur. See, these are all things that you pretty much know how to do. There's a motion blur, it stops, and then it cuts to the next thing. So in today's lesson, I'm just going to simply show you how to round trip video footage, take a freeze frame, and then add some motion graphics to it there. Yeah, that's basically it. So let's go ahead and get started. First things first, I'm going to open up After Effects. And the whole intro is a whopping, it's good for us. I'm going to take a little sip of coffee. Sorry that you have to hear that, folks, but I'm up early with the farmers today and need a little coffee to keep it going. Oh, this is Animation Composer. It's asking me to update it. I'll update it later. Okay. I'm going to do a new project here. Update it later. Now I'm just going to go ahead, hit Command I, and I have that on my desktop there. I'm going to bring in all those files. I held my Shift key down. And I'm going to go ahead and take this video file of the intro. I'm going to control click or right click and go New Comp from Selection. And if I hit Command K, what you'll notice is it's selected all the presets of that video, which is kind of handy. But what we're gonna use that for is basically a template. And you can see it. Put it for 20 seconds, square pixels, 2997. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. One other thing, actually I'll hit Command K again. We're going to make sure that the resolution's at full, and the reason being, if we don't put it at full, then it's going to export some of the frame grabs at a lower resolution, and we don't want to do that. So the way that we're going to break this apart, I'll go ahead and start with the first one. So one thing you could do, so I'm hitting Command and arrow, by the way, on my keyboard to go one frame at a time. One thing you could do is you could go ahead and start marking things. So I'm going to hit Option 8 on my keyboard, or I'm sorry, is it Command 8? They changed that. Shift 8. Shift 8. So I'll just put, in point Andy. Right, I hit OK, and then I'm going to scrub ahead to the very end there until I get to the very end. Oh, there it was. And Shift 8, and then I'll do out Andy, and that gives us an idea of that in and out point. One other neat thing that I could do if I wanted to is hit Shift Command D right there, and that will kind of break those apart if I wanted to. It's just a little thing that you can do. I'm just going to keep this same though. So basically what I want to do is grab a screenshot right there and bring it into Photoshop. And then it looks like what we need to do is we shift things over to the right, enlarge it a bit, and then we'll bring in those the rectangles and stuff. Now we could do most of the comp in Photoshop if we wanted, or we could do it right here. It's totally up to you. But there are many ways to do that. I guess that's the point, right? So let's go ahead and grab a screenshot. So I'm going to go up to Composition, Save Frame As, Photoshop Layers. I think that's the one I want. I'm going to call this Andy. And I made a little folder. Put it under Andy. And then what I'm going to do is go to that folder. I'm going to go ahead and open that in Photoshop. Now what's great is you can see that it put the title and action safe guides there. It knows automatically that I'm doing some sort of a TV thing. So let's go ahead and try to recreate as best we can this grab right there. Well, let's go ahead and do that. So first things first, we're going to let's duplicate that layer. So I'm going to go over here, Control click, go to Duplicate Layer. I'll call it Background. Okay, I'll put that in the back. I'm going to rename this Andy Isolated. And let's see what we can do here. So I want to isolate him, so I'm going to go over to Object Selection Tool, and I'm selecting that top one. I'm going to go ahead and select him, and select Subject. Hit OK. And would you look at that? That is pretty slick right there. So we're going to go ahead and click Select and Mask. Now there's a couple things that we probably want to take care of, so I'm going to switch this to Overlay, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. And let's go ahead and take care of some of this stuff right here. I think with this one I'm just going to use the brush tool at first. And just kind of go around the sides here and clean that up a little bit. I can make that bigger if I want, or not, or smaller, right? If I want to do opposite, I can go ahead and option, so that can kind of go there. And I'll go over to the sides here and do some of the hair. So this red overlay kind of works with, you know, hair and stuff. Works pretty good with that. So the biggest thing really with all of this is you got to take time with your masking. That will always get you. Always will get you. So I'm going to refine the edge here a little bit, and that will just soften things. And actually, especially with hair and other parts, that's a pretty good thing to use. I'm going to go ahead and do that over here as well. Refine that a little bit. And then I can switch to my brush tool again. Well, let's take a peek at that and let's see what's looks good. And yeah. Well, I'm going to do a little bit more work over by the hair. That's not very convincing to me. And you might need to take a couple kind of swipes at this before it looks good. Maybe spend a little bit more time than I'm doing here. There you go. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Yeah. So I'm going to just tighten that up a little bit. Hitting option. Oh. So again, hair's pretty tricky. Hair will be the trickiest thing that you do for sure. Hair is tricky. Also, like anything organic, like trees, tends to be fairly tricky. Let's see. That's not what I want. I'm going to add to that. There we go. Kind of doesn't look bad. Add to that a little bit. There we go. You know, and then if you want to, you can kind of feather the edges out. Sometimes if you soften the edges just by a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 pixels, it makes things work a little nicer. I'm going to increase the contrast just a little bit. Another thing you can do is you can shift the edge around. You can choke it in or expand it. And try to find it somewhere in between there. And then output, you're going to want to put to new layer and then hit OK. So then you get something that kind of looks like that, which is great. That's kind of what we want there. And it's made a new copy. There we go, and you got the background in there as well. So the next thing that we're going to want to do is we'll want to kind of make that bigger and then kind of make up this space over to the left. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to select both of these, hit Command T, expand it, shift it over so it kind of almost is there. guess I can go up a little bit. There we go, something like that right there. Okay, so that seems like a good spot. The problem is we gotta kind of fill in the blanks over to the left there with a background. So I'm actually gonna uncheck the isolated copy, and we're just gonna work there on the background. So with this one, I'm gonna go ahead and use the clone stamp tool. I'm gonna reduce the size of that, and I'm gonna make it so it's fairly soft. Soft brush. And the cool thing about the clone stamp tool is basically you just take a sample by clicking option. Where are we? Sorry. By clicking option, that will sample an area, and then if I just kind of move it around, that will basically copy wherever the crosshair is located. So it doesn't quite matter what we do there. I'm going to go ahead and basically it's just a blurred background, right? We don't want that though. It might take a little bit of time to put it all together there. And we're going to use a couple different tools to... Well, that's actually not that bad. Now what I'm going to do is switch over to the blur tool. I'll make that a little bit smaller. I'm going to make sure the strength is turned up quite a bit. I can even switch in between the blur and then the smudge tool as well. And you know, I might be able to get something that looks a little more believable in there. Let's see. So we don't really know what's going on there. Now, the other thing that we're going to want to do is create kind of a red background. So we're going to go ahead and create a new shape layer. And in this one, I'm just going to grab a kind of a red color, like so. And then I can just use my paint bucket tool. Now I could do a multiply, or I'm thinking maybe just the opacity on this one. Bring it down quite a bit. Then we see that layer. That seems to work right there. Seems to work. I did just notice there's some artifacts right there. I'm going to go ahead and clean that up just a little bit. Go ahead and get rid of that. Right there. That's kind of what was bugging me. Okay, that's kind of looking good. Yeah. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is merge that red layer and the background. So I'm holding the Shift key, and you can see I have those two layers selected, and then I'm going to hit Command E. And that kind of merges things together there. Well, there's one more thing, which is we need kind of this foreground. So let's go. I think it would be easiest to create that in Photoshop. So what we're going to do here is under the paint bucket tool, there's this thing called gradient. We're going to go ahead and click on that. Then we have some colors we can use. They have all kinds of different gradients. Let's go ahead and pick one that goes to transparent, and it looks like that color is already selected there. Let's go hit OK. I'm going to call this gradient. And then I'm just going to shift something like that. Now, that's not exactly what we want, so I'm going to hit Command T. I'm going to shift that around a little bit, make it a little bit bigger. That looks good right there. And then, you know, I can see kind of the edge there, so I'll go over to my eraser tool. I'm going to bring the opacity down, I don't know, it's 25%. And then I'm going to make it bigger by hitting open bracket. Then I'm simply going to erase some of that. Looks like I need to increase the opacity. I brought that up to 73. Now, I don't like the edge there. It is not looking good at all, folks. Let's bring that down to 35. I do need a softer brush is what needs to happen. So I'm just going to bring the hardness down to 0. There we go. That's what I want. Let's bring the opacity up. I brought the opacity up all the way. And that's what you're going to want right there. Just a little bit of a gradient. So again, sorry about that. I took you on a little bit of a journey there. Just keep the opacity at 100 and make sure that the hardness is down to 0. And that's gonna help you with that gradient. Once you've gone ahead and done that, go File, Save As. I'm going to save that on the computer. And PSD files. There's Andy. Hit OK. Alright, and I can quit out of Photoshop now. Okay. Once I've done that, I can go ahead and bring in some of my files there. So I'm going to bring in Andy, and not as footage, but as composition. Not composition retain layers, but composition. I'm going to hit open. Make sure it's asking me again, do you want composition? Yes, I do. I do. So now what I can do is drag that down, and ta-da, I can put that at the end point. And then I'm going to go ahead to the out point here, hit Option, close bracket, and that's kind of, boom, what I want. Now what I got to do is have the rectangle come in from the right and text come in from the right and the left and kind of from above. So let's go ahead and do that. And if I count right here, I'm just going to count the number of frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it was at about 11 frames right there that the movement went. So what I'm going to do is I put my playhead at the beginning here, and you can see that starts my playhead in that subcomposition right at the beginning. I'm going to go back to this. Now look at this. If I put my playhead in the middle of this, see, it's going to also go a few seconds ahead. So what's kind of neat about this, and what I'm getting at is, for example, I can go ahead and kind of time things out, right? So I can go ahead and it looks like that got out of place. That's not what I want. There we go. Right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count the number of frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I'm going to look at this, put that on, and then double click on this. My playhead is right in the spot where I want everything to end up. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift 8 and just make a note, this is end frame. That indicates that all my movements should stop right there. So now all I have to do is kind of finish the comp up. I want to make a rectangle, so red rectangle. I'm going to make sure there's no stroke on that. So let's go ahead and do that. There's a red rectangle. I can go ahead and move the middle of that right there. I'm going to rotate it a little bit, like so. And I just want to make sure, yeah. And now what I can do is I can bring that rectangle behind Andy, and that's kind of where I want it to go. I'm going to name that, hit return or enter on my keyboard and call that rectangle. Okay. I guess I want to bring that up just a little bit, like so. Okay. Now I want to go ahead and add some text. I'm just going to pick, geez, let's see. Oh, I know. Impact, just for the heck of it. So I'll just go ahead and kind of change some of this stuff. I know this was not bold, it was lowercase, but it was in italic, I believe. So I'm going to go ahead and make that small. I can rotate it. Oh, I can go ahead and lock everything else out that I'm not using. Go ahead and rotate that a little bit, like so. I can line that up over here. Hit Command plus and just make sure it's kind of lined up. There we go. Perfect. Now I can move that up or down. I'm using the arrow key with that and Shift key. There we go. And then I'm going to do Andy. I think that was all capital, and it was not italicized. Andy. And I'll go ahead and rotate that. And go ahead and move that over. And again, bring that behind Andy. Like so. I think I may want to move those out a bit. There we go. I think I'll bring that over like so. I'm going to go back to this, take a peek at what it looks like underneath. Andy Samberg, so it's capitalized. Okay, and it's partially over that, but not fully. So I'm going to go back like so. Other thing is, it seems like the rectangle's up a little bit higher. Let's go ahead and kind of shift things up. And then we'll do Samberg right here. Be sure not to mess up on your spelling. Let's try. Alright, then let's go ahead and rotate that. And we'll move that under. Up a little bit. Okay. And maybe a little bit smaller. Great. There we go. Now you'll want to get this as close as possible to the original. Try to get the colors and everything kind of as close as you can. Starring, that needs to be much smaller. Yeah, there we go. Alright, so we kind of have everything in place there. At this point, what you'll want to do is let's go ahead and add motion blur to all those layers. So we're going to do that with all the text and the rectangle. And this is the end frame. So let's do this one at a time. We know the end frame comes from the right. And so what we're going to do is we're going to hit Option P right here on the end frame of the rectangle. And then I'm dragging that to 0. And I'm pulling that off to the right. So now it sets its own keyframe. Boom, right there. So I know that the Sandberg text also kind of does the same thing. So I'm going to go to, again, same technique. End frame, Option P, and go off, and then I'm going to pull that off to the right. So that should come in at the same time. Okay, then we have the Andy. That one comes from the left, so I'm selecting Andy, hitting Option P, and I'm going to drag that from the left to right. Let's see, did that work? No, it didn't. And that's because I messed up. I'm going to hit Command Z for undo. That's my end frame. I need to move the playhead first and then bring it off. So you can see it's starting to come together. Let's go ahead and take a peek right there. Oh, I made a mistake. The starring came from the left and then the Andy came from the top. So let's go back in there and change that. So this is good for you to see this. Let's say you mess up on something. Well, I got that last keyframe in there under Andy. I'm going to just delete that keyframe. Boom, like that. Oh, let's delete the first one and then the second one. Now, what I want to do is I actually want to scale it and do position. So I'm going to hit Option S and Option P. Then I'm going to scrub that to the beginning. I'm going to scale that. But I also want to move it. So I'll move it up over here. There we go. And it should, yep, there we go. Kinda, that's exactly what we wanted right there. And then, of course, the last one. Let's go ahead and take the starring. And again, Option P. And I'm going to go to the beginning there. I scrub to the beginning. And then I'm going to move that off to the left. And ta-da! There it is. That's kind of how it works. So now we can look at what ours looked like. Boom, boom. There it is. So again, those are all the techniques that you're going to kind of do. When you're done, you're going to go to File, Save As, and then you'd save it as like Brooklyn or Brooklyn 99. I just call it B99. And I have it on the desktop. I'm going to save that under After Effects. Click Save. Then I'm going to quit out of that. Adobe Media Encoder. Like so. It'll take a little bit to open. Okay, once you've done that, you go ahead and find your work. You got the After Effects. And it will take a little bit of while to connect to that dynamic link server. So I have that Brooklyn 99 season intro. I'm going to make sure that I click on this. It's H.264, high bitrate. Output name, I'm just going to call this final. I don't have a folder made under my module 7, so I'm going to go new folder, call it exports. Actually, I changed my mind. We're not going to call that final. I'll call it Tim Willett B99. Click Save, click OK, and then hit play. And then that's going to kind of take care of everything. So for next week, you're only going to have 2 files that you put in there. You only have one assignment. That's to do the entire 20 seconds. So 9 different frames that you're going to do. And then you're going to have 2 different files. One will be the export, and the other will be the AEP file. So right there, those 2 files will be the only ones. And then you go ahead and upload that to Frame, and you're good to go. So if you have any questions, comments, anything, again, please, please, please do not hesitate to get in touch with me. I'm available 7 days a week. So yeah, I look forward to hearing from you and seeing your work. So far, it's been really great seeing your stuff. Stay well. Okay, bye.